Today's episode is brought to you by Forvis Mazars.
SoundCartel.
From SoundCartel, I'm Nicole Goodman, and this is Business Essentials Daily. What's your management animal archetype, and how can learning about it help you learn more about yourself? According to employment lawyer and co-founder of Edge Legal David Dilger, there are 4 types of animals that best illustrate certain management styles that can help guide managers to become more aware of what theirs is. So, are you a bear, a dog, or an ostrich manager, or a combination? Self-awareness is key to management effectiveness, as David explains to Jeff Waters.
It probably comes down to what Simon Sinek said, and that was, if you don't understand people, you don't understand business. And self-awareness is really how we don't see things how they are, but as we are. And so genuine self-awareness requires some sort of conscious acknowledgement of your own character, your feelings, your motives, your desires. And unfortunately, with most managers, they miss that critical part of, before you start managing others, you have to understand yourself, and that only comes through self-awareness. If you think about what often happens in a management conversation, or a great analogy is, 2 people may be speaking about the same fact, but if one's in English and another one's in a different language, both their intent is correct, factually they're correct, but they just can't understand each other. And so that tends to happen if we don't have genuine self-awareness. And the other part that comes out of this is that I think Amy Cuddy, in her fabulous book Presence, really nailed it when she said, before your team can trust you, before they respect you rather, they need to trust you first. And she said this was an evolutionary process, that really the most competent person in the cave was the person who could light the fire, but I've got to trust you that you won't burn me with it first. And so that's why we often have these highly competent people who just don't understand, why aren't I getting cut through? Because what they've done, they've focused all on the competency, but they haven't focused on the trust aspect first. So they've skipped the social events. They don't ask for help. They generally come off as unapproachable, but they're highly competent. And then that's just natural disconnect that occurs. And we've come up with a bit of a sort of fun way in assessing it by giving people names of animals. It sort of depersonalises it. And so I reckon it comes down to 4 types of people. They are the bear manager. Now, the bear manager is named because they're the sort of do as I say, not do as I do manager. They hibernate from people management for long periods of time, and then they come out swinging after hibernation. So what they tend to get is high compliance energy, but they don't get any discretionary effort. And their biggest challenge is bringing people along and having a concern for others when under pressure. So that's the first type. Now, where we see this from a legal point of view is we often see the bear manager come out in bullying claims and that type of legal result. Second type of manager I want to talk about is the dog manager. Now, the dog manager gets people, but they love to be liked. And I think they're epitomised by that fictional character, David Brent, in The Office. And he said, think of me as a friend first, boss second, and entertainer third. Now, the great thing about the dog manager is, because they like to be liked, they take things personally. And what they need to understand is when they say and do things, it's not as an individual. They stand in the place of the organisation. And so when they're focusing more on personal outcomes than business outcomes, you tend to miss things. And look, they can tend to be overly positive and get a bit under pressure. They become more disorganised. But their soft underbelly is that social rejection. And what they might end up from a legal point of view is creating cliques within a workplace because they play favourites, or alternatively, they look for the easy way out. So rather than managing a performance, they come up with an easier way, which is let's have a redundancy. And then what that then tends to leave is high resentment with if you're not in favour. The third one is what I call the mouse manager, and they are typical of getting on the hamster wheel. If you're the type of manager who, rather than have that difficult conversation, you're on your laptop at 11 o'clock at night or coming in early to do the work of others because you don't want to actually have the hard conversations. Now, they get people and you get discretionary effort to a point. You don't often get compliance effort like the bear does, but eventually, because you're too obliging and you're focusing more on preventing instability, you'll end up with either people getting burnt out, yourself, because you're doing all the extra work, or alternatively, you end up with the team getting sick and tired of filling in for David, who's a poor performer, and, the manager not doing anything about it. And our final manager is what I call the Ostrich, and they're a micromanager. I call them that because they put their head in the sand around the critical part of their job, which is actually managing performance. The Ostrich tends to focus on the task and the technical aspects of what they do in their job, but they don't bring people along with them, and they don't understand the critical aspect of management, which is building relationships, and building the team is a crucial part of their job. Now, they're good at technical compliance, but they don't see the bigger picture, and they can often manage by being overly critical and focusing only on problems. And we tend to see that in a legal claim tends to be an unsuccessful PIP or a performance improvement plan, which is more a bureaucratic process without any genuine intent to actually manage performance. So look, overall, what's the perfect manager? Well, I call them the unicorn. They don't exist, but they're probably a combination of them all. You've got to be a bit of the bear. You've got to have cut through, and you've got to make hard decisions. You've got to have a bit of the dog about you, which is to bring people along and see the big picture. Mouse manager is great because you're consensus focused and you've got a people first approach. And finally, we like our Ostrich because they give us compliance and they plan and then they can implement. So that's where I think, genuine self-awareness goes. You won't have all of it, but all we really say is if you're genuinely self-aware, you'll focus more on doing the poor things that you currently do. Don't try and be someone you're not. That will come across as inauthentic, but come across as the best version of what you genuinely are.
Forvis Mazars. Same local team, new global reach. A new two-firm network still offering international audit, tax and advisory services. Committed to helping our clients confidently build and grow their businesses. Move forward with Forvis Mazars. Visit forvismazars.com/au. That's FORVISMAZARS.com/au.
You've got some very interesting archetypes there, David, but if some listeners don't know how to become self-aware, have you got any guidance on resources for them?
Look, the best thing you can do is a plethora of tools out there which help you. DISC, Myers-Briggs, Enneagram, Discovery Insights, any of those will actually work for you. You've just got to go in and do the work. And it's a challenge. So sometimes you're going to hear some stuff that, you don't want to be that type. Well, let me just give you some, without ruining the whole story for you. There are no perfect types and there's no good or bad types. There are just poor performers of a particular type in whatever of those sort of mechanisms that you use. So I would do the hard work of actually taking the time to use some tools that exist out there by a number of providers. I prefer DISC because it's what I call Sesame Street simple, and you can teach it. And then once you do that, it only becomes effective when you communicate that with your team. You knowing yourself is half of the battle, The other part is actually the implementation, so everybody is on board with this type of discussion.
That was David Dilger, employment lawyer and co-founder of Edge Legal. This episode of Business Essentials Daily is produced by the team at SoundCartel. Thanks for listening. I'm Nicole Goodman. We'll bring you more Be Daily tomorrow. Follow at BE Daily Podcast across social media and head to bedaily.com.au for more from the Business Essentials Daily podcast. SoundCartel. This episode was brought to you by Forvis Mazars. To find out more, visit forvismazars.com/au. That's FORVISMAZARS.com/au.